The officer's hand rested on his holster, not drawing, just resting, like a threat that hadn't decided what it wanted to be yet. "Sir, I need you to step away from the desk." Marcus Whitfield didn't move. He'd been called worse things in better hotels than this one, and he'd learned a long time ago that the man they thought he was could never survive contact with the man he actually was. What none of them knew, not the manager who'd called this in, not the officer with his hand hovering, not the small crowd already pulling out their phones, was that in 11 days, every single one of them would be working for him, or not working at all. Before we go any further, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now let's begin. The Ashford Grand sat on the corner of a downtown block that smelled like rain on warm concrete and the faint sweetness of valet exhaust. Inside, the lobby carried its own scent, lemon polish over old marble, a fireplace that ran on gas but crackled like it didn't know that, and beneath it all, the clean cold breath of air conditioning fighting a July evening. Soft piano drifted from unseen speakers. Guests in linen and gauzy summer dresses moved past a fountain that trickled instead of roared, respectful of the hush the lobby demanded. Marcus stood near the check-in counter in a plain gray button-down, sleeves rolled to the forearm, a canvas duffel over one shoulder, and a 16-year-old girl beside him clutching a chess trophy wrapped in a hotel bath towel because it hadn't come with a box. Her name was Zoe, and she'd just taken first place in the regional youth championship 2 states over. They'd driven 4 hours straight through so she wouldn't miss her own banquet tonight, the one being held in this hotel's ballroom, the one Marcus had personally chosen for her. He didn't look like money. He never had. His watch was scratched, his shoes were comfortable rather than expensive, and he carried himself with the unhurried quiet of a man who had never needed to prove anything to a room. That quiet was often mistaken for something else. "Reservation for Whitfield," he said to the young woman at the desk, sliding his ID across the marble. She glanced at it, then at him, then back at the screen with a flicker of hesitation that Marcus had learned to read the way other men read weather. That was when Diane Coswell appeared. She came around the corner of the desk the way a manager comes when she's decided something before she's even seen it. Chin already set, heels already clicking with purpose. She was maybe 50, silver blonde hair pinned back hard enough to pull at her temples, a blazer that cost more than most people's rent. She didn't ask the front desk agent what was happening. She simply looked at Marcus, and then at Zoe, and made her decision. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside for a moment." Her voice was pleasant the way a knife is clean. "I'm checking in," Marcus said. "Reservations under Whitfield. 2 nights. We're going to verify that." She turned to the agent. "Did you run his card yet?" "He hasn't given." "I haven't given it because you haven't asked," Marcus said, still calm, still even. Beside him, Zoe's fingers tightened around the towel-wrapped trophy. Diane's eyes swept him again. The rolled sleeves, the duffel bag, the daughter with a trophy that didn't look expensive enough to belong to someone staying at the Ashford Grand. "We've had some issues recently," she said, loud enough now that 2 women near the fountain looked up from their phones, with individuals coming in off the street claiming reservations that don't exist. "I'm sure you understand we have to be careful." "I don't have to understand anything," Marcus said. "I have a confirmation number." "Then you won't mind waiting while we sort this out." She said it like a favor. A man near the bell stand murmured something to his wife. A woman by the fountain lifted her phone, angled it just slightly. The chorus was starting, the way it always did. Not loud, never loud. Just a current of whispered commentary moving through a room that had already made up its mind about what it was watching. Is he supposed to be here? Security should have caught this at the door. Poor girl having to see this. Zoe looked up at her father, waiting for him to do something. He didn't. He stood with his hands loose at his sides, breathing slow through his nose, his face arranged into the particular stillness of a man who had done this math 100 times before and always arrived at the same answer. Dignity is the only thing in this lobby that's actually his, and he isn't handing it to anyone tonight. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I'd like my key, or I'd like to speak to whoever's above you." Diane's mouth thinned into something that wanted to be a smile. "There's no one above me here tonight." She lifted a radio from her belt. "Frank, can I get you to the front desk?" Frank Duarte arrived built like a doorway, arms crossed before he'd even finished walking. Everything okay, Diane? This gentleman is having some trouble with his reservation. The word gentleman came out with air quotes built into her tone. I think it might be best if he waits outside while we confirm things. I've confirmed it 3 times, Marcus said. The confirmation number is on the email I can pull up right now. Sir, please don't raise your voice. He hadn't raised it. Everyone in that lobby knew he hadn't raised it. But the sentence did its job anyway, painting a scene that hadn't happened, and Marcus watched 3 more phones lift into the air like a small crop of periscopes. Dad? Zoe whispered. Just show her the... It's okay, baby, he said, not to Diane, not to Frank, only to his daughter. Watch how this goes. This is the important part. Frank stepped closer, close enough that his shadow fell over the duffel bag. I'm gonna need you to step outside, sir, or I'll have to call this in. Then call it in, Marcus said. He said it the way a man says a sentence he has already decided the ending to. Someone near the bar laughed under their breath, not cruelly exactly, just the reflexive laugh of people watching a scene they think they understand. A bellhop shifted his weight and looked away, uncomfortable but silent. The chorus kept murmuring. That's what a robbery attempt looks like. Glad they caught it early. Hope they don't let him make a scene. And through all of it, Marcus stood with his shoulders relaxed and his jaw unclenched, a man absorbing heat without catching fire. The officer arrived 9 minutes later. Young, earnest in the way of someone new enough to still believe every call was exactly what dispatch described. His hand found his belt out of habit rather than threat, but habit reads the same to the person on the other end of it. Sir, I need you to step away from the desk. Marcus looked at him, looked at Diane, looked once more at his daughter's face, scared now, not for herself but for him, and he stepped back exactly 1 pace. Not a retreat. A choice. I'm not resisting, he said. I'm complying. I want that noted. His voice never climbed above conversational. But before this goes any further, I want everyone in this lobby to understand something. I am not leaving because I did anything wrong. I am leaving because I choose not to make my daughter watch her father get handcuffed over a hotel reservation in front of a room full of strangers with their phones out. He picked up his duffel bag. He took Zoe's hand. And he turned and walked out through the same revolving door he'd walked in through 11 minutes earlier, back straight, steps unhurried, the trophy still wrapped in its towel, like something worth protecting even now. Outside, under the porte-cochere, rain had started to needle down in that thin, indifferent way summer rain sometimes does. Marcus set the duffel down, crouched slightly so he was eye level with his daughter, and let out one long breath through his nose, the only visible sign, in 11 minutes, that any of it had cost him anything at all. You okay? Zoe asked, which was the wrong direction for the question to travel, and they both seemed to know it. I'm fine, he said, and then, quieter, almost to himself, they'll understand soon enough. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't call Diane names under his breath. He simply took out his phone, dialed a single contact, and waited. Renee, he said when the call connected, it's Marcus. I need you to pull the guest services log for the Ashford Grand downtown, tonight, right now, and I need legal on standby. Also, cancel my incognito badge for the property inspection. I think we can skip that part. He listened for a moment. No, he said. I'm not angry. I just want it documented before anyone has time to clean it up. Then he ended the call, picked his daughter's trophy back up off the bench, and walked her 2 blocks down to a diner that smelled like coffee and griddled onions, where they ate pancakes at 9 at night and didn't talk about the hotel at all. By morning, the Ashford Grand's general manager had 3 missed calls from corporate before he'd finished his first coffee. By noon, Diane Coswell had been asked to step into a conference room she did not recognize the names in. By that evening, a company-wide email had gone out from Ashford Hospitality Holdings, the parent group that owned this property and 41 others across the country, informing all staff of an immediate internal review of last night's guest incident at the downtown flagship location. The whispers began before the email even finished loading on people's phones. Wait, Whitfield, as in Marcus Whitfield. The Marcus Whitfield? He owns Ashford. He built this whole hotel group from 3 motels in Ohio. Are you kidding me? That man Diane had walked out last night was our boss's boss's boss. A bellhop who'd looked away the night before now stared at his phone like it had physically struck him. The young front desk agent who'd hesitated over the ID sat frozen at her terminal, replaying 11 minutes she couldn't undo. Frank Duarte, who'd put his hand near his belt over a bath towel wrapped around a trophy, found himself sitting in HR before his shift even started, staring at a suspension notice he didn't yet understand the size of. And Diane Coswell, Diane, who had built her whole identity around being the person who caught the problems before they became problems, sat in that conference room across from two attorneys and a district vice president, watching security footage of herself narrating a robbery that had never been happening, a man who had never once raised his voice, a daughter who had never stopped watching her father with quiet, terrified pride. He owns 42 hotels, the district VP said, not unkindly, just factually. This one included. He was here for an incognito inspection before his daughter's banquet. You had him removed from his own lobby. I didn't know, Diane said. How could I have known? That's the question we keep asking too, the VP replied. Not whether you knew who he was, whether it would have mattered if you had. Diane found Marcus 3 days later, not at the hotel. She'd been suspended from setting foot on the property, but outside the small chess academy where Zoe took Thursday lessons, a place Diane had to search for and drive to and wait outside of like someone hoping for a chance rather than owed one. Mr. Whitfield. Her voice had lost its clean knife edge. It came out smaller now, unsure of its welcome. I need you to know I wasn't trying to. I was just following protocol. We'd had incidents. I was doing my job. You were doing your job, Marcus agreed. And for a moment she looked almost relieved, until he continued. The question was never whether you were doing your job, Diane. The question is what your job actually was, in your head, before you ever saw me walk through that door. Because the man beside me carrying a duffel bag and a girl with a trophy wrapped in a towel, that man existed in your mind before he ever spoke a word. I just happened to be him. Please, she said. I have 22 years with this company. I have a mortgage. I know, Marcus said, and it wasn't cold, which somehow made it worse. I looked at your file. 22 good years, by every account, until 11 minutes changed how everyone reads the other 22. He shifted his bag on his shoulder. I'm not the one who decided your consequences, Diane. Legal did. HR did. Your own choices did, 11 minutes at a time, in front of a room full of witnesses and a girl who will remember this for the rest of her life. All I did was refuse to disappear quietly, the way you assumed I would. No, Marcus said. It's gone because of who you decided to be the moment nobody with power was supposed to be watching. That's not one night. That's every night you've ever worked that desk. I just happened to be the one still standing there when the bill came due. He didn't wait for her to answer. He turned, pulled open the glass door of the chess academy, and went inside to watch his daughter's lesson, leaving Diane standing on the sidewalk in the same thin rain that had followed both of them for 3 days now. 6 months later, the Ashford Grand downtown had a new general manager, a mandatory bias response training built directly into new hire onboarding, and a scholarship fund named after nobody in particular, just the 11 Minutes Fund, that quietly covered travel and tournament costs for young chess players from families who couldn't otherwise afford it. Zoe's trophy, out of its towel now, sat on a shelf in Marcus's office beside a small brass plaque that read nothing more than a date. Diane Coswell did not disappear into ruin, because Marcus had made sure of that too. A severance package larger than the company was required to offer, a letter of recommendation that mentioned her 22 competent years and left the last night for HR's files alone. She took a position at a smaller boutique in 2 states away, one with 12 rooms and no chandeliers, where, by all later accounts, she was the first person to greet every guest by name and the last person to assume anything about who they were before they said it themselves. Marcus never told the story publicly. He didn't need to. The lobby had already told it for him, 11 minutes at a time, on a dozen phones that never stopped recording. What happened at the Ashford Grand wasn't really about a hotel, and it was never really about a reservation. It was about the 11 minutes it takes to decide who someone is before they've said a single word about themselves, and the far longer time it takes to undo that decision once it's been made in front of a room full of witnesses. If this story moved something in you, we'd love for you to share it with someone who needs the reminder, and to stick around for the next one, because the truth, eventually, always finds its way to the front desk.